The story of the fisherman. Sire, there was once upon a time a fisherman so old and so poor that he could scarcely manage to support his wife and 3 children. He went every day to fish very early, and every day he made a rule not to throw his nets more than 4 times. He started out one morning by moonlight and came to the seashore. He undressed and threw his nets, and as he was drawing them toward the bank he felt a great weight. He thought he had caught a large fish and felt very pleased. But a moment afterwards, seeing that instead of a fish he had in his nets only the carcass of an ass, he was much disappointed. Vexed with having such a bad haul, when he had mended his nets, which had been broken in several places, he threw them a second time. In drawing them in again he felt a great weight, so he thought they were full of fish, but he found only a large basketful of rubbish. He was much annoyed. "O fortune," he cried, "do not trifle thus with me, a poor fisherman who can hardly support his family." So saying, he threw away the rubbish, and, after having washed his nets clean of the dirt, he threw them for a 3rd time. But he only drew in stones and shells and mud. He was almost in despair. Then he threw his nets for a 4th time. When he thought he had a fish, he drew them in with a great deal of trouble. There was no fish, however, but he found a yellow pot, which by its weight seemed full of something, and he noticed that it was fastened and sealed with lead, impressed with a seal. He was delighted. "I will sell it to the founder," he said. "With the money I get for it, I shall buy a measure of wheat." He examined the jar on all sides. He shook it to see if it would rattle, but he heard nothing, and, judging from the impression of the seal and the lid, he thought that there must be something precious inside. To find out, he took his knife and, with a little trouble, opened it. He turned the jar upside down, but nothing came out, which surprised him very much. He sat it in front of him, and while he was looking at it attentively, such thick smoke came out that he had to step back a pace or 2. This smoke rose up to the clouds and, stretching over the sea and the shore, formed a thick mist, which caused the fisherman much astonishment. When all the smoke was out of the jar, it gathered itself together and became a thick mass in which appeared a genie, twice as large as the largest giant. When he saw such a terrible-looking monster, the fisherman would have run away, but he trembled so with fright he could not move a step. "Great king of the genie," cried the monster, "I will never again disobey you." At these words the fisherman took courage. "What is this you are saying, great genie? Tell me your history and how you came to be shut up in that vase." At this the genie looked at the fisherman haughtily. "Speak to me more civilly," he said, "before I kill you." "Alas, why should you kill me?" cried the fisherman. "I have just freed you. Have you already forgotten that?" "No," answered the genie, "but that will not prevent me from killing you, and I am only going to grant you one favour, to choose the manner of your death." "But what have I done to you?" asked the fisherman. "I cannot treat you in any other way," said the genie, "and if you would know why, listen to my story. I rebelled against the king of the genie. To punish me, he shut me up in this vase of copper and put on its leaden cover his seal, which is enchantment enough to prevent my coming out. Then he had the vase thrown into the sea. During the first period of my captivity, I vowed that if anyone should free me before 100 years passed, I would make him rich even after his death. But that century passed and no one freed me. In the 2nd century, I vowed I would give all the treasures in the world to my deliverer, but he never came. In the 3rd, I promised to make him a king, to be always near him and to grant him 3 wishes every day. But that century passed away, as the other 2 had, and I remained in the same plight. At last I grew angry at being a captive for so long, and vowed that if anyone would release me, I would kill him, and would only allow him to choose in what manner he would die. As you have freed me today, choose in what way you will die." The fisherman was very unhappy. "What an unlucky man I am to have freed you. I implore you to spare my life." "I have told you," said the genie, "that is impossible. Choose quickly, you are wasting time." The fisherman began to devise a plot. "Since I must die," he said, "before I choose the manner of my death, I conjure you on your honour to tell me if you really were in that vase." "Yes, I was," answered the genie. I really cannot believe it, said the fisherman. That vase could not contain one of your feet even, and how could it hold your whole body? I cannot believe it unless I see you go into the vase. Then the genie began to change himself into smoke, which, as before, spread over the sea and the shore, and then, collecting itself together, began to go back into the vase slowly and evenly till there was nothing left outside. Then a voice came from the vase, which said to the fisherman, "Well, unbelieving fisherman, here I am in the vase. Do you believe me now?" The fisherman, instead of answering, took the lid of the lead and shut it down quickly on the vase. "Now, O genie," he cried, "ask pardon of me, and choose by what death you will die. But no, it will be better if I throw you into the sea whence I drew you out, and I will build a house on the shore to warn fishermen who come to cast their nets here against fishing up against such a wicked genie as you are, who vows to kill the man who frees you." At these words the genie did all he could to get out, but he could not because of the enchantment on the lid. Then he tried to get out by cunning. "If you will take off the cover," he said, "I will repay you." "No," answered the fisherman. "If I trust myself to you, I am afraid you will treat me as a certain Greek king treated the physician Douban. Listen, and I will tell you. In the country of Zuman, in Persia, there lived a Greek king. This king was a leper, and all his doctors had been unable to cure him, when a very clever physician named Douban came to his court. The physician was very learned in all languages and knew a great deal about herbs and medicine. As soon as he was told the king's illness, he put on his best robe and presented himself before the king. "Sire," said he, "I know that no physician has been able yet to cure your majesty, but if you will follow my instructions, I promise to cure you without any medicines or outward application." The king listened to his proposal. "If you are clever enough to do this," he said, "I promise to make you and your descendants rich forever." The physician went to his house and made a polo club, the handle of which he hollowed out, and put in it the drug he wished to use. Then he made a ball, and with these things he went next day to the king. He told him that he wished him to play at polo. Accordingly, the king mounted his horse and went to the place where he played. There the physician approached him with the club he had made, saying, "Take this, sire, and strike the ball till you feel your hand and whole body in a glow. When the remedy that is in the handle of this club is warmed by your hand, it will penetrate throughout your body. Then you must return to your palace, bathe, and go to sleep. And when you awake tomorrow morning, you will be cured." The king took the club and urged his horse after the ball which he had thrown. He struck it. Then it was hit back by the courtiers who were playing with him. When the king felt very hot, he stopped playing and returned to the palace, went into the bath, and did all that the physician said. The next day, when he arose, to his great joy and astonishment, he was completely cured. When he entered his audience chamber, all his courtiers, who were eager to see if the wonderful cure had been effected, were overwhelmed with joy. The physician, Douban, entered the hall and bowed low to the ground. The king, seeing him, called him, made him sit by his side, and showed him every mark of honor. That evening the king gave him a long rich robe of state and presented him with 2,000 sequins. The following days he continued to load him with favors. Now the king had a grand vizier who was avaricious and envious and a very bad man. He grew extremely jealous of the physician and determined to bring about his ruin. In order to do this, he asked to speak in private with the king, saying that he had a most important communication to make. "What is it?" asked the king. "Sire," answered the Grand Vizier, "it is most dangerous for a monarch to confide in a man whose faithlessness is not proved. You do not know that this physician is not a traitor, come here to assassinate you." "I am sure," said the king, "that this physician is the most faithful and virtuous of men. If he wished to take my life, why did he cure me? Cease to speak against him. I see what it is. You are jealous of him. But I do not think that I can be turned against him. I remember well what a vizier said to King Sinbad, his master, to prevent him from putting the prince, his son, to death. What the Greek king said excited the vizier's curiosity, and he said to him, "Sire, I beg your majesty to have the condescension to tell me what the vizier said to King Sinbad." "This vizier," he replied, "told King Sinbad that one ought not to believe everything that a mother-in-law says, and told him this story." See you tomorrow.